Thinking about using your mobile phone while driving this morning? Look out. You could be caught on a new spy in the sky camera. NZTA Waka Kotahi is trialling 3 high-tech cameras across Auckland for 6 months from today. Check out these busted motorists caught red-handed by similar cameras in the UK and Australia. Cameras capture mobile phone use to begin with and will soon detect if you're not wearing a seatbelt. Driver distraction is a contributing factor in nearly 8% of all crashes where someone is killed. And current fine for using a phone while driving, $150. Kane Patina is from NZTA Waka Kotahi. He's the Director of Land Transport. Greg Murphy is a race car legend and road safety advocate. We're going to be with Greg in just a second, but we will start with you this morning. Kane, Morena, good morning.
Morena, good to be with you.
Good to have you. Where are these cameras?
Well, they're in 3 locations in Auckland, and we're not going to disclose exactly where they are because the purpose of this trial is to get a really good understanding of driver behaviour, particularly the use of cell phones. If we were to disclose the exact point of where these cameras are located, it would tip people off and they probably would put their cell phones down, and that's not really what we want for the purpose of this trial. We want to get a really good sense of how prevalent the use of mobile phones is, having collected the data and information and evidence through this trial.
OK, so what do they look like? I mean, is it obvious that you would have a camera looking at you? Would you be able to tell looking at a street lamp or whatever?
I don't think most people would know at all if they've driven past one of these cameras, so no, they won't be easy to spot.
And are you looking for just the lap or the hands on the steering wheel with the phone in the hand, or is it also the phone to the ear?
There are a number of things that the camera does pick up. So first and foremost, it will detect whether you've got 2 hands on the steering wheel or one. But the technology is pretty good. I mean, it will also detect if you're carrying something in your hand. And really what the purpose of it is that the technology will detect whether or not there's some anomaly, and we will have people who will then check to validate to make sure that that people are actually distracted. They might have a cell phone in their hand or something else. So there's some checks and balances through the trial. It's not just dependent on the technology telling us what the answers are.
Right, so the technology reads the photo and it determines whether there's something in the hand, and then you get a real person to check whether it's a cell phone or a drink bottle.
That's correct, yeah. We need to check and validate to make sure that it's right, and part of the purpose of that is to maintain the integrity of the trial. So there's 2 things that we're trying to achieve through this. The first is to get a really good understanding based on the evidence of the prevalence of cell phone use by drivers, but the second is to also test the technology out in a New Zealand context. I think you've already said that this technology is used in the UK, it's used in Australia, and I think Western Australia is carrying out a trial at the moment very similar to what we are. But we want to understand how the technology works in a New Zealand context, because it could well be that it's used as a monitoring and enforcement tool in the future.
OK, so that's not been ruled out at this stage, but as you say, no enforcement action taken during the trial, which lasts 6 months. What speeds can how fast does a car need, or how slow does a car need to be going for the camera to actually get you? If you went through at 150 k's an hour, would it ping you?
I think the technology is pretty good to even detect people going at that speed, or even at slower speeds, of course. But this is precisely the point of the trial, is that we want to understand what the capability of this technology is, what it allows us to be able to do, because it may well be that we can use these cameras for not just detecting speed and whether people are speeding, but also whether people are using or wearing their seatbelts and whether they're using mobile phones as well. So It's a technology that could do a number of things rather than just simply one thing.
Does it show the driver and the passenger? Because there are a lot of concerned Americans after a man was caught cheating on his wife because of the photo that, there was a photographic evidence of the mistress in the car. Does it capture the passenger?
We're very concerned about making sure that we protect people's privacy through the course of this trial. And so what happens is that if there is an image and there is no evidence that people haven't failed to comply with the rules, that image is automatically deleted, I think, after about 14 minutes. If it's sent to us to validate and check that that someone has used their mobile phone, we often get an encrypted message, and often people's faces are cropped out. So we are making sure that we don't disclose people's faces, images, and things like that through the trial.
All right, let's bring in Greg Murphy now. Greg, you've been listening into Waka Kotahi NZTA. What do you make of it?
I think the idea of bringing this technology is actually very good. I don't think we need to do a trial, because all you need to do is stand on any street around in New Zealand, pretty much anywhere, for a couple of minutes to see excessive use of people driving with cell phones in their hands. I mean, you don't need a trial to know that driver behaviour is pretty abysmal, and the prevalence of cell phone use is absolutely enormous. I mean, I see it every single day, multiple occasions within a very short period of any journey. I've been with police on patrols, and they see people using cell phones in their cars constantant's. I've reported people driving, watching movies with their phones at the top of their steering wheels while driving. It's an epidemic in New Zealand. And distraction is horrid.
We've heard from truckies this morning who say exactly the same thing. They said every single day. So you would say just load the fines up. It's $150 at the moment, I think. You think the fines should be higher?
Oh, I think absolutely. I think we should be actually setting a proper standard here around what we think about people driving with using cell phones and texting and the likes. I mean, it should be a minimum 500. If it was my way, to be 1,000, and police would have the ability to confiscate people's devices. I mean, distraction is underreported. Like Katahi would admit that this is what the 8% is what they think it is, but it's a lot higher than that, because people don't admit that they were using their phone when they do have a nose to tail, have some sort of crash, and those that are seriously injured or killed can't tell you, and there's no proof of a cell phone being used. But distraction is on the rise massively.
Yeah, big issue.
It's a much bigger cause than what is being reported, and we've got to stop it. There's no need for a 6-month trial, and I don't know why people can't be sent warning letters from this trial, if we are going to go through with it, to actually tell them and let them know that they have been spotted using a phone. Why not use the trial in a more effective way than just gathering data and checking the technology? Because I'm sure the technology is very good. Yeah.
Greg, Kane's still here, actually. Kane, why aren't you deciding to do that at this point?
Well, there's a couple of things, I suppose. The first is that we can only do what the law allows us to do, and currently we can't send out any infringements for people who are detected through the use of this particular camera system. They are often issued infringement notice if they're caught by the police, and one of the important aspects of this technology is that if there are changes to the legislation that allows camera technology like this to be used for enforcement purposes, then the trial gives us a really good understanding and confidence that we can rely on the technology to issue infringements in the future.
You can't have a cop on every street corner, right, which is the problem at the moment, that people feel like they're a bit bulletproof with their phones. What about the fines? Have you recommended to the government that they increase the fines for cell phone use?
Well, part of the Road to Zero program is to review the penalties regime, and that's led by the Ministry of Transport. I think that's underway at the moment. But look, there is no question that the level of fines in New Zealand is significantly less than other countries. You only need to look to the state of Victoria in Australia, one of our closest neighbours. I think if you're caught with a mobile phone, I think the level of fines could be anywhere up to $1,500.
Is that what you would like to see here?
$150.
Kane, would you like to see something like that here?
Well, we need to have some really good analysis that's done to work out what is the right level of fine or penalty that will actually help change people's behaviour. There's no doubt in my mind that the current level of penalties is way too low, and there needs to be an adjustment if we're going to provide a meaningful deterrent. But what that actual number looks like will depend on the review that's carried out by the Ministry of Transport.